Hello, everyone, everywhere. This is Bob Thibodeau with the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, and you are listening to the Going North podcast with my good friend DomBrightmon. Be sure to subscribe to his podcast so you will not miss any of the upcoming episodes, and be blessed in all that you do.
Today's episode is sponsored by the GoingNorthPodcast.com shop. And if you head over to the wonderful website, cop some merchandise, take a selfie with you rocking the gear, shoot it to yours truly, the host, DomBrightmon at gmail.com, and I will give you a shout out on the show as well, and heck, even tag you on social media as well. So feel free to check out some of the good old merch on GoingNorthPodcastShop.com. Now let's get on with some super special, awesome content. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GNP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North podcast. We got another super special, awesome human for you today, courtesy of Podmatch.com, where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. And today's guest is definitely cooler than two cucumbers. Let me tell you a bit about her, because she is a grandmother, y'all. She's got a whole bunch of wisdom, as well as a wife, a speaker, and a licensed cosmetologist. I think that's rarity for the show. I don't think I ever had another licensed cosmetologist on the show. So that's right, y'all. You're going to get your hair did through this fabulous woman right here, baby. And most of all, she is also a child of the king, y'all. So she used to be a psychic, but now she's a child of the king. She made a full turnaround, y'all. That's right, indeed. Baptism by water and fire. You love to see it. So let's give it up for the sensational and magnificent Susan McCeldry. How you doing today, Susan?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks much for joining us. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So my goodness, as with all introductions, they're not allowed to be 84.5 days long, and I probably only covered maybe 0.5 for what you actually do to help out the world. So my goodness, mind giving us a bit of your backstory and how you got here today, since your first time on the show.
Well, after my experience and coming to Christ, it was such a dramatic event, and the way God brought me to himself. This was back in 2014. And after I came to Christ, I knew this was not something that I could be quiet about, that God brought me to him the way he did for me to share it, not to, bury it and tuck it under the covers. So I knew a book would be coming, but I wasn't sure how long that would take, because it was such a dramatic and traumatic experience for myself and my family. I wanted to be sure that they were all on board and okay with me writing this story, because it was going to affect everybody in the family. So I started writing the book several years later, around 2019. So from then until now, that's how long it took to write the book and to get it ready and to get it to print. So it's been quite a long journey.
I'm guessing longer than two wiener dogs then.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yep. It's definitely interesting, because you probably didn't want to go the whole fiction novel route and saying, oh, yeah, these folks are not real, even though they are. Names are changed, protect things. Like, nah, it's going to be nonfiction. Y'all going to get the real deal, whole and field indeed. So what helped you get the confidence to write the book?
Well, when I came to Christ and I started attending this church, and mind you, my whole entire life, I claimed to be a Christian. So I was claiming to be a Christian because I believed in the existence of Jesus, but then I was also dabbling in these occult things. And so I didn't study the Bible. So I didn't know what was truth and what I should be doing and not be doing. So when I actually came to Christ in 2014, I started attending this church, and it's a funny thing when Christians meet other new Christians and they know that you've come to faith, especially like later in life. They'll ask, one of the first things they'll ask you is, oh, well, how did you become a Christian? What happened in your life? And So as I began telling my story, everyone that would hear it would be like, you've got to write a book. You have got to write this. People, need to hear this story, what God has done. And so that was the encouragement that I received from many people that I needed to write this book.
That's right indeed. So Christian by costume, not by actions. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And then got into the occult. So how did the occult trip happen? Did you just fall into a trap door? Did you walk to Barnes and Noble and the tarot cards just attached themselves to your hair and you walked home with them? Like,
it's the way the devil works is really crafty. So I had a grandfather, and he passed away when I was a year old, so I never really got to know him. But I heard many stories over the years growing up about him. And even though he was a professed Christian as well, he was a Roman Catholic, there were rumors that from the family that he had this, they called it the gift of knowing. And I know that he did tarot cards, and I'm not sure, what else he might have done, but I would hear these stories growing up, and I was so fascinated by them. And so that kind of like planted the little seed all growing up that, I kind of always had this interest in the supernatural. So as I became an adult, it was probably around the year 2000, 1999, right around there. I had a couple of dreams that led me searching for answers. So I was attending church at the time, so I went and talked to my pastor, and he didn't give me the answers that I was wanting. So I searched elsewhere for the answers that I wanted, and I found that in occult books, like books that psychics have written. So that started, my journey. And so even though I was attending church, I was still fascinated by psychics. I believed everything the psychics had to say about the other side. I would see a couple of psychics in person, like when they would do events and they would do group readings. And at that point, I hadn't had like a private session with a psychic or anything. So that was always like in the background for like another 10 years of my life. And then the housing crash happened in 2007. And at the time, we owned a window and door company that we supplied windows and doors to new construction homes. Well, it was the new construction market that crashed. So I'll never forget the day in November of 2007, my husband walked into my office because I did all the bookkeeping and managed the office. And he said, I don't know what is going on. He says, but new construction has come to a complete halt. And it was from that point on, we had to start making cutbacks. And so in 2009, we lost everything, our house. And I'm telling you, we were living very nicely, a nice house, cars, boats, land, vacation house. And we lost everything. And the one thing that we maintained was this little 1,000 square foot house in the foothills of Tennessee. It was just this little mobile home that my husband had remodeled the whole interior of it. It was beautiful. So losing everything, we had to sell our house in a short sale. It sold like in 2 weeks. I mean, we were just being like shuffled out very quickly. So we made the decision to go move up into this house in Tennessee out of state because it was something that we owned, and that it was totally ours. So we took our kids, which that was another traumatic experience, took them away from their family and out of state and moved up there. And we were completely humbled up there. Both of us ended up having retail jobs because we were in a very commercial and tourist area, and that's really all that there was available. So we were very humbled in that way. But after a year and a half living there, we decided to come back to our home state. And it was during that time when I came back that I began to have thoughts about what am I going to do with the rest of my life. My husband had decided to start another window and door company, but this time focusing on existing homes. So doing like the remodeling of doors and windows. So that was I was still doing the books for that company, but it took up such a small amount of time. I had a lot of extra time on my hands. So I'm going through this, time. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And thoughts of my psychic experiences came to mind. And I was like, well, maybe I could, see if I have an ability, see if I inherited my grandfather's ability. And let's see, if this is something that I could actually do for a living and make money, and still not knowing I'm doing anything wrong. So I started, researching, and found one of the psychics who promotes, she has these books that will help you if you have an ability to help you to grow it and to bring it forth. And so I bought her books and started doing that. And, the one thing that I was just following this candy line trail by the devil. And one thing that this woman said was, one of the things she told the readers to do is you take your hands and you put them, palms facing each other, like you're holding a ball, but there's no ball there. And she says, and if you have the power, after you do these things, I can't remember what she said to do. She says, you will feel like there is an actual ball of energy in your hands. So I did what she said to do, and I'll be darned if I didn't feel it. And that was it. I was hooked, line and sinker. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got the supernatural power. I've got the gift. And that is really what really drew me in going into the occult.
And having a ball at that too. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Man, and yeah, I love what you said there about the candy line trail, because it's so darn true. It's like, hey, that's right. What they say, there's no quote: the road to hell's paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So my goodness, once you discovered that you had the power, according to all the stuff that you were reading and the stuff you're able to feel afterwards, what happened next? Did you have like a short Swami business phase too? Did you have like tables at random flea markets or something? Telling folks like, hey, I can tell your future. I'm clairaudient. I'm clairsentient too, baby. I got all the clairs.
Yeah. Once I realized that I had this, supernatural power, I connected with a family member who lived a couple of hours away, and she was claiming that she had some kind of psychic power, and she wasn't through blood, it was through marriage. So I contacted her, and I went down to go see her. But before I went to go see her, I started looking at more psychics online. And one thing I did, what I came across was, it's this astrological blueprint of your life that you could have printed out. And I did that. And the only thing I remember that it said was that I was the healer. And I didn't really know what that meant, as far as, are we talking like someone in the health industry? What kind of healer are we talking about here? So I kind of just put that to the side. So then I found this other psychic online, and I messaged her and I told her a little about myself. And because now, mind you, I still think I'm doing something good, and that this has to do with God. So I mentioned something about Jesus to her, and she messaged me back rather quickly. And she just said, the reason why I don't talk about Jesus is because not everybody has the same beliefs. And, just gave me this quick little encouragement. And then she says at the very end, continue on your path as a healer. And I'm just like, what? So I'm like, okay, now two people, I've got from two different sources that I'm some kind of healer. So after I contact that family member, I went down to go see her. And then when I get there, she says, by the way, I just want to let you know, I field calls for this psychic, and people call into her, and I'm in the board, and I field the phone call. She says, I want you to call in and speak with her and see what she has to say, to see if this is really authentic. So I'm nervous as all get out, because I've never talked to a psychic before. I had no idea what she was going to say. So I get online with her, and she has no idea that I'm connected to the woman fielding the phone calls. And she tells me, one of the things that she tells me is I'm a healer. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And then she says, and now she's more specific. She says, now I'm not talking about like a doctor or a nurse or, you know, in the healthcare industry. She says, I'm talking about like this metaphysical healer. And she says, and it is going to be huge. She says, I can't even describe how huge this is going to be. So hearing that now for the third time, I was like, okay, so this is real. You know, I've been told 3 times now that I'm a healer. And so I'm just constantly getting confirmation like that I'm on the right path. So she also, I found out, she does these sessions with you. Like she'll do like 6 sessions to help you develop your ability. And she does them one-on-one through the phone. So I signed up to do that with her. And that's kind of how the ball really got rolling. And she would give me these psychic readings as we're talking, and you know there'd be a little bit of truth sprinkled in there, and that's just enough, you know, to hook you in. And then you start believing everything that they tell you. So I'm like, okay, you know, she's told me truth, she's told me this, told me that, you know, and I'm gonna believe whatever she has to say. So she was the one really directing my path. So I started at her direction. I started doing, she's like, you can do it. Just start doing some psychic readings on friends and, you know, family, whoever will do it. She says, I'm telling you, you've got the ability to start doing it. Then I'll be darned if I didn't start doing it. And and true things, you know, started coming through for people. So that just, you know, hooks you even more. And so then as I'm talking to her over time, she starts telling me, you know, now it's time to bring in this healing, that you're a healer. So it's like being an energy healer is what they call it. And I started doing that. And the people didn't even have to be in my presence. I could just focus my mind on who this energy, supposedly, you know, energy is supposed to go towards to heal them. And it would take about 30 minutes. And my hands would hover, let's say, like over my knee. And then after I talked to the people afterwards, they would be like, you know, I could feel something happening in my knee. And so it was just, you know, just kept getting me in deeper and deeper. And, you know, and I think I'm doing good. I'm doing good things for people. I'm healing them. And, you know, it's just so tricky what the devil does. So I did that for about 2 years. And then as I was giving healings, I started hearing messages in my head for the people that I was doing these healings on. So, you know, it just kept like escalating into more and more and going deeper and deeper. Well, soon I didn't have to, because when you connect and you receive messages from the spiritual world, you're supposed to surround yourself in white light of the Holy Spirit and call on the archangels for protection. And it got to the point where I didn't even have to go through this formal ritual before my connection. The voice was just always there. And that's where the trouble really started to begin, because the voice was grooming me. And I'm telling you, it was like there was somebody having a conversation with me in my head. Like, I can't even explain it. It's not even like I'm forcing these thoughts like of someone talking back to me. It's like it was just there, like somebody is just talking to me in my head. So of course, you know, so I'm already drawn in and sucked in so deeply. I'm believing everything this voice says, and this voice is just lying to me, but I'm believing it all. And it got to the point where, you know, there's something, the devil likes to get you secluded. So not only had this psychic done this, but the devil then was trying to get me separated from my husband. And that's one thing that the psychic kept telling me, you know, you're so unhappy, you need to get divorced from your husband. And so then this voice started telling me that my husband was cheating on me. And I believed it. And I was in the grocery store one day, and my husband was with me, and he was up at the register, and the voice is telling me, your husband's cheating on you, and the woman that he's cheating with is in the grocery store right there in the next line next to him. And he's going to look up, and they're both going to look at each other. And as soon as the voice would say that, I'll be darned if they didn't look at each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is true. My husband's cheating on me. So then one day, soon after that, the voice told me to, you know, kick my husband out of the house because he was cheating on me. And we were already having, you know, problems because of all this. My husband didn't like that I was doing all this psychic stuff. So my husband came home one day, and oh, it just breaks my heart to even think about this moment all the time. My husband walked in the door. He came home early that day around noontime, and he had lunch in his hands for both of us in one hand, and he had a bouquet of roses in the other hand for me. And I came running out of the room and started accusing him of cheating on me. And we had this huge argument, and I kicked him out of the house, and he left. Then I thought, I'm free. I'm free from, my oppressive husband and his controlling nature, and I can do whatever I want. And didn't really realize that I had a hook right through my cheek, and the devil was just reeling me in. And I wasn't really free at all. I was just under the spell and the captivity of Satan. So it was after he left, and I thought I was so free. I had the voice in my head, and I'm getting the deeper I was getting, the more compulsive my behavior, obsessive compulsive behavior, where things had to be in a certain way. The salt and pepper shaker had to be facing a certain way, and it all had to do with good and bad energy. And if it's not facing this way, it's bad energy. Oh, if I touch that, it's bad energy. I have to go cleanse my hands, to bring back the good energy. And it was just, oh my gosh, it was so exhausting. So that night, the voice in my head, is grooming me and it just praises you and just lifts you up and just makes you feel like you're on top of the world. And the voice is just telling me, we're going to do a review of your life. And the voice reviews my whole life and all the struggles I've overcome. And because of all the struggles and suffering I've overcome in my life, I'm going to receive my golden halo that night. And that's one thing that they talk about a lot in the spiritual world, is all these jewels and gems and gold and things that you're going to be promised, when you go to the other side, because of what a wonderful person you are and all the good things that you did. So that night I was going to receive my golden halo. So the voice said at 3:00, because I was in my room now, at 3:00 in the morning, I want you to look in the mirror, and exactly at 3:00, I want you to count down from 10 to 0. And when you get to 0, you're going to see the golden halo appear over your head. So 3:00 came, and I'm so excited, and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm counting down, and I get down to 0, and I can hear in my head like this crackling noise, like a sparkler, that sound that sparklers make, like it's like this little electricity sound. So like this, like the golden halo is getting ready to appear, but it didn't appear. And I'm like, now questioning in my head, and to the voice, I'm like, where's my halo? Why didn't my halo appear? And now all this time, these 2 years that I was practicing in the psychic world, I could never see anything supernatural. I never saw visions of anything. I could only feel what they called energy. That's the only thing I could ever feel. I never saw anything. But at this moment at 3:00, when I asked, where's my golden halo? I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and this dark cloak superimposed over my reflection. So I couldn't see my reflection. I only saw this dark hooded looking cloak, like a cloak of a Grim Reaper. And the voice said, now the voice has turned mocking, and it hissed at me, and it said, the reason why you didn't receive your halo is because you are not good enough. And that was it.
Wow.
Yeah. My eyes were opened. I did a flip turn from the mirror. I looked up to the heavens, and I'm screaming, and I'm going, no, I love God. I love God. Because this whole time I thought I was doing something good and connecting with God and his angels. And as I'm screaming, in my ears, my voice sounded demonic. And I thought I belonged to the devil. I thought, oh my gosh, it's too late. I'm going to hell, and I now belong to the devil because of what I've done. So that was the moment I lost all rationality of thinking. I was already on that path, but this put it on fast motion, where I completely lost all sense of rationality. I think I'm possessed by the devil. My kids wake up, they hear me screaming. I have them call my family. Now this is 3:30 in the morning. They have them call my family. All my family comes to my house at 4:00 in the morning, and I'm just pacing. I'm afraid. I tried to leave the house and the voice is screaming at me now, telling me, if you leave the house, you're going to die. And the voice is now has become the accuser, because that's what the devil is. He's the accuser. And the voice is just telling me how I'm going to hell, just repeatedly telling me I'm going to hell and what a horrible person I am. So when my family arrived, they had already been witnessing my decline over, the past several months. So they had kind of already had a plan, of what they thought was going to be necessary. So they ended up calling the police department and had a deputy sheriff come to the house. And he spoke with me for a few minutes, and then they had me Baker acted. So the deputy took me in the back of his police car and took me to the hospital. And I was admitted into the mental unit. And I stayed in the mental unit for 5 days. And that is where I was just, I was completely alone. I was locked away, taken away from my family. And this is what God felt was necessary. What he had to do was completely strip me of everything, because before I thought I was in control of everything. And now he showed me I was really in control of nothing. And I didn't have control over the toothpaste for my toothbrush. I had to go ask for it. I mean, this was just complete humbling on my end, and where I just had nowhere else to turn, because nobody could get me out, because I was locked in there for a mandatory of 3 days. And I didn't have anybody else to turn to. And that is where I really and truly turned to God and just prayed the Lord's Prayer and just continually asked him to help me. And for the first couple of days, I was tormented by the voice. But I think it was on the second day, maybe that night going into the third day, the voice, one of the nurses had told me earlier that if I began hearing the voice in my head again, that she had something that she could give me to help me. So that was kind of tucked away in my mind. So then one night, the voice is just, this voice was all consuming. I could not think of anything else. I couldn't focus on the TV. I couldn't read a book. The voice was just always there. So I remembered what this nurse had said, and I know this is all from God. And I stood at my closed door that goes out into the hallway to the nurse's station. And I was going to go talk to that nurse to get help. Well, the voice, of course, wants to keep me from getting any help. And the voice is screaming at me and saying, if you open that door and you go out in that hallway, you are going to die. Just screaming that at me over and over. I'm like, no, she promised she could help me. She promised that she could help me. And the voice, was like, no, don't you dare open that door. Well, I opened the door, walked out into the hallway, and I didn't die. And that was the first time God had opened my eyes to really understand that everything the voice had been telling me was lies. I didn't see it before. It's crazy. You were completely blinded. I didn't see any of the lies before until that moment. And I walked up to the nurse's station, and I'm talking to her really softly. And I'm like, you told me, to come to you, to come get you if I start hearing the voice in my head again. And I'm hearing the voice. And she said, what's the voice telling you? And I said, it's telling me that I'm going to hell. And she just looked at me for a moment and says, okay, I'll be right back. And she went and got me some medication. I'm assuming it was just like some kind of medication to help me sleep. But it was from that moment on, my clarity of my mind began to come back. And that's how God saved me. It's a truly such a dramatic, incredible story.
I'm pretty sure that was one heck of a journey indeed. My goodness, indeed. My goodness, indeed. And yeah, I guess from the outside looking in, it's like, shoot, toothpaste, can't even trust you with toothpaste. And it's like, man, some idiot ruined it for everybody. It's like, oh God.
Yeah. And it was really for the protection, because people will use anything, because there's people, and I was in there with a bunch of other people. I wasn't like in my own room, in my own area. It's all there's one common area that has tables that are bolted down. The chairs are bolted to the tables, because these people get violent. So you're in there, so there's rooms off of the common area, And you could be in there sharing a room with someone. They don't put two women in the same room, but there's men also in that common area. So it's women and men mixed together. And there's some very, very angry people in there. So, and there's people in there who tried to commit suicide, or so there's the potential of being able to harm yourself or harm others. So it's a very controlled environment for the safety of the patients. So, someone could take a hairbrush or a tooth comb, they could take anything and either try to kill themselves with it or harm somebody else. So that's what it's all for the safety. But in that moment, I didn't see it that way. It was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even have my own toothpaste. But, I realized after the fact that it was really for the safety, of us.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So what happened next after that? Did the nurse give you the Lord's Prayer afterwards? Like what, or did you able to find Christ on your own? Did you find the first church you saw after finally getting out?
Yeah, well, so I was in there a mandatory 3 days, and I met with a psychiatrist every day and also a social worker every day for a few minutes. And on the third day, the psychiatrist had told me that he said, technically you can leave here. Today's your third day. You can leave here on your own. He says, but I can really tell that you really want to get better. He says, so if you will voluntarily stay here for an extra 2 days, we could set up a plan for you so that when you get out of here, you're set up with the tools that you need so you can get better. So I agreed to stay the additional 2 days. And so on my last day there, they did this big family meeting. So all my family that had come to my assistance, 5 days earlier, we all came together. They came to the hospital and had a family meeting of what it was going to look like for me for all of us when I left the hospital. So my husband came back home. He had come home while I was away, to be with the children. So he promised to stay there to help me get better. But God had other plans there as well. So that began the process, because as soon as I got home, I knew I did not want to have anything to do with that psychic world at all. I mean, I did the divination crystals. I did everything. So everything I had, I threw away. Books, the crystals, everything. Anything I had that was of the occult, I threw it all away. And I knew that I wanted to seek God, but I didn't know how to do it. I mean, I knew God had shown me the way I had been doing it was wrong. All these years was not the right way. So I thought to myself, I'm like, who do I know in my life that really outwardly shows a Christian life, a Christian lifestyle of what it means to be a Christian, a true Christian, not just someone who's mouthing it on one end, but, living in sin on the other, someone who really looks like a Christian. So my mind went back to my old neighbor in the house we lived in right before the housing crash. My mind went back to her. They had a daughter, and our younger daughter, they became best friends. So we got to know them, and I knew that they were Christians, and the way they lived their lives, the way they spoke, they were just humble. They were just, what the image that you might have in your mind when you think of what is a Christian. So I reached out to her when I got out of the hospital, because she reached out to me when she found out I was doing all this psychic stuff. And she messaged me on Facebook and tried to, warn me and speak to me in a loving way, and I just blew her off. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. So I reached out to her to let her know that I was not practicing in the psychic occult world anymore, and that I would like to speak with her. So she was so excited. It was an answer to her prayer, because she had been praying for me. And I started meeting with her. So I was meeting with her, and she was teaching me the foundations of Jesus, who he is and what he did for me. So I was meeting with her once a week. And then I was also meeting with a therapist once a week. And I met with the therapist for a year and a half. So I was getting it on both ends. And God just used all of that to just heal me and to draw him closer to him. And that's how I came to Christ.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about. Days I'm talking about. Indeed. That's right. That's right, indeed. The prodigal daughter comes back home, baby. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed.
That's actually the title of my book. The subtitle, well, it's Heaven's Joy, the Seeking and Saving of a Runaway Psychic. And that's exactly the prodigal son, how he ran away. That's exactly where the subtitle came from, that God was seeking, trying to save me as I was running away.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Got you real out there. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. When the crapola hits the fan, it will spread. And boy, did it spread. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Had to get that wonderful Lysol and the hazmat suit, as well as a wonderful giant vat of antibacterial solution, spiritual version, and clean it all up. That's right, indeed. Come on back. That's right, indeed. And have a big celebration in this form of a book. So, my goodness, so since you've been on a few interviews promoting all the work that you're doing, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often?
There's people that dabble in the occult, not really knowing what they're doing, but they profess to be a Christian. So when I was at this craft fair as a vendor a month or so ago, this woman was questioning me to death about, but what about when you're doing something good, but you're healing these people? Isn't it doing good for them? So how do you justify that? Isn't it okay just because you're doing good for other people? And my question is no. How else would the devil trick and draw and entrap people if he did not disguise himself to be something good that does something good, but it's going to lead you to hell? And that is something that I really would like to spark more conversation of, because I think people try to justify, but it's doing something good. So how could it be bad?
Oh yeah, definitely right. And you see it now more than ever. I've never in my life seen so many like advertisements and displays in certain areas for crystals, tarot cards, and the occult and all this other stuff out there. It's like 10, 15, 20 years ago, you wouldn't see it as much as you do now. It's like
Right.
it's like sneaking
Exactly.
in multiple ways. Like now more than ever, it's like in your face if you're aware of it, and it's easy to get sucked in. It's like it doesn't have to be a full vacuum. It could even just be a random it
Mm-hmm.
could even be gum on the ground and get on your shoe.
Mm-hmm. It just happens a little at a time. I mean, it can happen real quickly, in a smash, but usually it's just a very slow process. It's that little initial turn. And then once you make that turn, it just draws you in deeper and deeper.
That's right, indeed. And then it'll draw you so deep you'll get bitten by a giant shark. That's right,
Mm-hmm.
indeed. The good news is you came out alive. You didn't get eaten. You didn't get turned into dinner. That's good. That's good.
Yes.
That's right, indeed. She is not dinner. She is a victor. There's a big difference. That's right, indeed. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a one-liner in there somewhere. That's right, folks.
all
Don't
by
be. Oh no, go
all
ahead.
by God's mercy.
That's right, indeed, folks. That's right. Don't be Satan's dinner. Be a victor. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, what's next for you, Susan?
So I have my book that just was published in July, Heaven's Joy, the Seeking and Saving of a Runaway Psychic. So I'm, trying to get the word out. I'm trying to, help people to see that dabbling in these things that we think that there's some kind of spiritual, supernatural world out there, like there's one in between where God resides and one in between where the devil resides, and then there's this other spiritual world, and that's not how it is. You're either for God or for the devil. So getting that word out, just glorifying God, is my passion. And I also had been praying about where to donate 10% of my proceeds. So I've decided to partner up with this ministry called Mission 2540, and they are passionate about bringing seminary courses into prisons, and they're actually teaching these courses to the inmates so they can minister to other inmates in the prison, and then also when they come out of prison, they will have the option, to really go into the ministry, after they come out. So that's just something else I'm very passionate about as well.
There we go. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Making the prison robes orange. That's what I'm talking about indeed. Giving them that word while they in the pen. That's right indeed, because they're definitely gonna need it indeed. Everybody gonna need that word. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's definitely interesting. Never even heard of them. So Mission 2540, you said?
Yeah, that's their like private ministry, but it's under the umbrella of MINTS. It's MINTS. And the MINTS program, they do seminary courses, and they provide this all over the world. They do them in different languages. And this Mission 2540, the person that spearheads this, Nathan, he has an actual recording studio in his house, and the professors will come there and record their courses there, and then they will use those DVDs to take into the prisons, and then people who are in other countries can also, connect through the internet and take seminary courses that way.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. Getting that good seminary goodness. That's what I'm talking about indeed. So, and speaking of courses and books, your fabulous book, Heaven's Joy, if that book was a food, what would it be and why?
I would say seafood, because there's people that love seafood and there's people that hate seafood. And I think of it that way because it doesn't really matter what I would say or how I'm going to say it. There's going to be people who are going to love it, and there's going to be people who are just going to hate it, like that it just turns them off and it turns them away. And that will all be by the work of God, whose heart he's going to open to receive these words as truth and in love. So yeah, so I would compare it to seafood, or any kind of other food that people could love or hate.
So taste and see, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, oh taste and see it, the Lord is good. That's seafood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's right indeed. That heaven's joy, y'all. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right. It's a whole fish basket, y'all. That's right indeed. She's feeding the 5,000. You love to see. That's right indeed. They're eating the 5,000. That's right. Heck, let's eat even more than 5,000. Let's 10x it. Feed 500,000 with the book. That's right. That's right indeed. Get that heaven's joy out there indeed. That's right indeed. Because the earth is a giant bagel and we need the cream cheese spread around it through this book, y'all. I'm telling you. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Because that cream rises to the top. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in the current year with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Well, I wouldn't tell myself like to go on a different path, because I firmly believe that God has us live through certain things for a reason. There's a reason and a purpose for anything. But I would tell myself, in the hard moments, in the most difficult suffering that you could ever think that you're ever going to go through, God knows about it and he's right there with you. So never forget that God is always with you, and seek him and lean on him and not yourself.
Yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. So I gotta look in yourself in the mirror and be like, what you doing? Well, trying to lean on your own understanding. What you doing? You know you ain't doing this right. Come on now. That's right indeed. Getting that book. That's right. Put that book on your forehead. That's right indeed. Look at it. That's right indeed. Keep yourself in it. Keep your nose in it. That's right indeed. Be nosy about the word. That's right. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Don't lean into that own understanding. Because hey, definitely pays off when you have a multitude of counselors. Get that wisdom around you. That's right indeed. That good old wisdom indeed. And I know Sirs got some good wisdom indeed, especially biblical, enhanced, and inspired. So for those who need to keep in contact with you and enjoy that wisdom you're sharing with the globe, what's the best way for folks to do so, Susan?
I have my own website, SusanMcCeldry.com, SusanMcceldry.com. And I have my book on there. I have blogs. You can subscribe to my emails. That's the best way to contact and learn more about me and the book.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Gonna put a link to her fabulous site in the show notes indeed. Contact the sensational Susan. That's right indeed. Get on the bandwagon before superstar status appears. That's right indeed. And join in the journey. That's right indeed. She's probably got more stuff cooking in the future. Probably got another book that's hiding in her that's waiting to come out soon. So that way you'll be first to know. That's right indeed. You can camp outside, pitch a tent on her website if you have to. Metaphorically, I don't know if you can actually do it in real life, but metaphorically pitch a tent out by her website, so that way you know. It's just the size of another book.
Yes, definitely. We'll be keeping the subscribers updated.
That's right, indeed. And bring s'mores too. That's right. Bring s'mores. That's right. That's right, indeed. Well, before any more rabbit holes appear, any parting words before we close up shop?
The one thing I would love for people to know and really take to heart is before you participate in anything, and I mean anything, do your research. Even walking in a church, do your research of that church, because there's so many false teachings out there. Do your research of anything. If a friend asked you to participate in some kind of ritual or something that seems harmless, investigate everything. Do your research before you just blindly walk in and participate.
Thanks a bunch for listening to this podcast episode. Hope you really enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to this show if you haven't already, because more greatness is coming your way. And if you're so inclined, be sure to share with at least 3 other people in your network, so that way more folks can catch the fire that is on the Going North podcast. Keep winning at life and advance others to advance yourself.